be an owner. Like, you are the CEO of your own narrative, of your own story. So just own it. Don't stick your head in the sand like an ostrich and hope that it's all just going to figure out for you. Like, it's about moving from being at effect, things affecting you, life affecting you, to actually being at cause and really like taking that ownership and that responsibility. Like, you are the creator and you influence your surroundings.
Welcome to 99 Humans. My name is Jeff LaCosta, curious coach and Wall Street Journal best-selling author, striving to understand how little things generate big impact.
And I'm Nadia Carta, tech executive and lifestyle coach with a mission to transform lives and corporations by kindling hearts to generate a zeal for life.
Each week, we investigate stories about the human side of leadership to re-energize your spirit and help you become a stronger leader.
Because the reality is that leadership is messy, goofy, challenging, but always human.
Thanks for spending time with us today. Let's dive in.
Hello, everybody. Jeff, it's so good to see you. And Kay.
Welcome, Kay.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Where are you joining us from right now?
I'm actually in Dublin right now.
Amazing.
So I know, right? Yeah, the other side of the pond. They're good storytellers over here. Maybe this is where I got my storytelling from, is Ireland. They're coming over to me. Let me tell the story.
I have to ask the question because having lived in Dublin for 2 years, I'm now wondering, what's the weather like today?
It's pretty rainy. I mean, do I need to even tell you that?
So
it's
typical.
They're consistently rainy. Yeah. But it's currently boiling in where I'm actually joining you from. So I was just saying, I had a lovely jacket that I was going to wear, but I couldn't because I was like a beetroot red. So that's it. Blast the heating, counteract the rain. That's the way to do it.
It's getting you ready. I hear you're going to be in Cancun next week. So this is your room preparing you for the sun.
That's it. Yeah, exactly. And then Dubai the week after, so I really will have to get prepared for the sun. So yeah, I'm lucky at the moment. I've got lots of lovely travel coming up.
Is Cancun for pleasure or for business?
All for business. So yeah,
what?
I'm speaking and running workshops in Cancun all around connection and bringing people together through networking, and then I'm running a workshop out in Dubai.
My goodness, that's amazing. You live the dream life.
Do you think so? Oh yeah, sometimes I do it. You can't complain, but when you are tipping one suitcase out to repack to get travel again, that's when it's like, oh, just a bit of home time. Sometimes nice, isn't it?
Well, Kay, I am so excited for the chance to connect and hear your stories. You are certainly a very impressive leader on paper, which means you have an impressive facade to get behind here in our conversation. But from many years in Toastmasters, I think honing, speaking, and storytelling, many years at Google and YouTube, as well as being a communications coach, I'm wondering, what are you up to right now? How would you answer that question?
Oh, it's a good question. You've definitely done your research, haven't you, on paper? So helping people with their narrative, fundamentally, that's what I do. People and brands. So whether that is still working for Google as a creative business lead and helping big brands on YouTube with their narratives so that they can make the most effective ads on our platform, or outside of Google, I have my own company as a coach, so helping individuals with their story, really owning their stories and their narratives and being able to execute them the most effectively. And ultimately, I guess, like within that, what I found is there's really this duality going on, is there's two narratives that I work with. I wonder if you can guess. Do you know what the two narratives are that I work with?
Well, I was about to ask, what do you mean by that?
Go on. I put it back on you. I did the classic. So it's fundamentally people come to me saying, oh, it's normally oh, I'm a little bit afraid of speaking. Can you come and help me with maybe a talk that I've got coming up? Or maybe they want to get promoted and climb the corporate ladder. Or perhaps they want to rehash their sales narrative so they can grow their organizations. And fundamentally, what I find is, yes, we can do that and we do that. But before we get to that external narrative, the thing that holds people back the most is our internal narrative. And that's what we have to fix first. So this is the duality that I work with, is fixing, helping people. So I'm an NLP practitioner and hypnosis practitioner. And I couple that to help people unlock their fears, their negative emotions, limiting beliefs and decisions they've made, so that we can then get to the, okay, now we've cleared all of that. Who are you? And then what do you want to be, and what do you want that narrative to be?
Do you ever find resistance to that? And I ask because, so Nadia and I are also both coaches, and the best kept secret of all coaching, I think, is that it starts with values, the internal narrative, exactly as you're describing. That can be money coaching, relationship coaching, sleep coaching for toddlers. All of that starts from the same place. And yet, here people are going, I've just got this speech in like a month that I'm trying to get ready for, and you're trying to ask me about my value system and what's going on, deep, dark secrets beneath. I'm just wondering, especially in the type of work that you do, if you find resistance to going there when maybe folks think they're starting on a different planet.
Yes. And I'm so glad that you brought this up, because it's something that I've been really learning and stretch testing with my business, is that I've had to say no, like quite a few times, because really every time I coach somebody, like that's my name to their transition, really. And I know that I can help them out with their narrative and do a couple of sessions and give them some tips and tricks. However, I know the actual transformation and the actual work we can do if we do it properly. And now I'm so dedicated to the process that I'm like, actually, I'd rather not do it. You're not my client. I can put you in touch with other coaches who are willing to do that. But for me, I know what actually works and what really gets success. And I want to stick to that formula.
Oh, I really love your determination and your drive to say, this is what I am, this is what I do, and it's either this or another thing. You know, there's so many people that can help others, and that's amazing. I'm wondering, when you think about the clients, I mean, I have so many questions about this, but let me unpeel and organize my brain. So I want to start with why people are so afraid to speak. I mean, I think that together with other fears, public speaking is like it's number one. Wow. Okay. That's amazing. I love that. And as you know, I do a lot of public speaking as well. I know just yesterday I spoke it was a big stage, 150 people, about AI and all of it. And I prepped so much. I think I prepped for like weeks. And I'm wondering, from an expert like you, why people are so afraid of public speaking.
Yeah. So 75%, and I think it's more.
Wow.
I think it's more than 75, but 75% suffer with some sort of speech anxiety. So that could be like just a little bit shy to like cripplingly cannot do this. And it ultimately, so everybody comes with this fear of speaking, but it's never the presenting problem. We know this as coaches, right? Got to get underneath the surface to really understand the root cause. And it's not that. It's normally the fear of, what if I say something stupid? What if I mess up? What if I trip up? And what if I'm maybe not good enough, or not liked, or not loved? And it's that actually what we get down to, and it's 100% of cases. It always goes down to people not feeling whole, not feeling aligned. And ultimately, that's the process that I do, is bring people back into alignment
So
and
it's the fear
feeling
of
whole.
judgment.
It's the fear of judgment.
Mm. Can you make that real for us? Is there a client or a time where you faced this challenge and you helped someone overcome? Because I'm wondering, like there's obviously some mechanics of public speaking that are like, okay, here it might be tips to be more charismatic on stage, but I buy, right, that you got to start with the internal work. But how does that mix actually present itself through one of your clients that you've helped, cross the chasm maybe?
Mm. Gosh, this I love them all. They're all such incredible mates. They've all gone on like these brilliant journeys, and all of my clients as well. There's not really one category, or they come from all different warps of life, but they all tend to be kind of managerial directors, perhaps in corporate organizations, who okay, this one I'll tell you one that comes. I get this a lot. They come to me with, again, wanting to climb the ranks of the corporation, and we do that, of course, in terms of making sure that we heal them, we do the clearing. So I do a 6 weeks basically with NLP and hypnosis breakthrough session, and then we do what you talked about, your values, and with the layers of identity and understanding who you are, we goal set. And then we start to talk about the external narrative. Okay, so this individual came and wanted to get a promotion. So we started talking about goal setting for that promotion and that narrative. But actually, when we hit that midway point, what we started to realize was actually she has a passion project that had been creeping up through the works whilst we were doing all this work that actually came to the surface.
Mm.
And that's what she thought was actually really excited and wanted to lean into. So we did both. We started to do the narrative, because ultimately your narrative is you, right? It's your story and how you present that. Of course, it has different ways of expressing itself, but it fundamentally comes down to you. Anyway, fast forward, we reset a new goal as well because she got the promotion. So she got that, and then wanted to start growing this side project. And she decided to be a coach, particularly a sobriety coach, is what the space that she's lent into. And that's actually one of the first conversations, because I'm sober. One of the first conversations we had was about sobriety, and she decided that's the path that she wanted to go down. And anyway, this so we reset the goal of what does this mean in terms of your sobriety coaching? And I love to stretch people. Like, that's what I'm here for, right? I'm here to push and challenge you. Know when to push you, but push and challenge.
Yeah.
And she wanted to set a social media goal. She said, oh, what about like getting 5,000 followers? That would be like, that's quite good. From scratch, from nothing, 5,000 followers. And I was like, why don't we put a 0 on the end? And she was like, oh, that's a lot. And I was like, oh, you could do it. I back you. Yeah, I think it's definitely. But it's also got to be realistic for the individual, of course. So that was too far-fetched. But what we actually landed on was putting a 1 in front of it. So 15,000 followers. Anyway, she went and hit that, not just in the time frame that we set out, but actually half of the time frame that we'd set out. And this, I think, is a really good example of when you clear the rubbish that gets in your way, the negative emotions that have been weighing you down. Some of them aren't even yours. You picked up along the way from family members or from people that you've had interactions with that then limit you. We know what it's like to hold a negative emotion. We know people hold themselves differently, don't they? When you're sad, it's different. We vibrate on a different frequency. They're low vibrational energies. So when we start to clear that and people start to vibrate on a higher frequency, they start to bring in and attract what they want. When they then start to get rid of or realign those limiting beliefs and start to believe in themselves that they can do this, that mindset shift just changes the game, changes everything. It is so, so powerful. And then, like I said, when we properly learn how to goal set and stamp that goal into our timeline, And then we start to manifest properly, learn how to bring things in. I've got to the point now, if I want a new client, then I sit down, I do my process and my practice, and I can get a phone call within 24, 48 hours. And I can be really specific as well. I could be like, okay, I want it to be a guy this time, and I want it to be, and like even like set out the challenges of like what I think they're going to bring for me. Because every time I get a new client as well, I learn massively because they always present new challenges that, that stretch my brain. So anyway, I just went on a tangent there, but I think the learning was it's super powerful, the
Yeah.
process. First bit being that clearing, and then the second bit being that external narrative.
Well, we do love tangents in here, so that's why we keep the questions to the bare minimum, let's say the ones we share, because we love when the stream of consciousness comes and it's so powerful and overflowing. And the what comes to me, I mean, what you shared to me is like, okay, this is music to my ear, fantastic. But then I'm wondering, when what did I say? The rub hits the road. That's the way you say it. Like these
Yeah.
people that you're coaching in these processes and things like that. Of course, I believe in all the woo-woo that you shared. But then often technicalities gets in the way. Like, for example, in the case you mentioned, like this person that needed to achieve the 15,000 followers. And then you have Instagram algorithms, and then you need to build the reels, and then you build the social. Like there's so much in it that can really lower the energy of this person going after a goal. So I'm wondering, how do you support your clients in that moment where they are doing the work? You see them that they are committed, they are believing in themselves, they cleared all the energy, and yet the results that they are willing to accomplish, they're not coming. So what do you do in that point?
Then there's a problem. It's like that doesn't exist. If you've done the work properly, I've not experienced, of course, stuff crops up, but you've got to then find a case of why is that happening. So then there's a new challenge or a problem. So again, it's finding the underneath cause of that, and then it's going back and to reassess if the process definitely did the right clearing, or what is actually causing that, of course. So yeah, there's a bit of clear up that goes on afterwards as people go out into the world, but fundamentally it's like I said, it's a really powerful process where you are literally reconfiguring people's neurons in their brain, getting them to think and behave and do differently, which fundamentally creates massive shifts in their being and the way that they live their life and everything. So it's that, and if someone's willing, then the change will happen.
I think your story is so powerful because you're right. It's an encapsulation of getting to the core, learning the inner story to then master the outer story. And it makes me curious how you found your inner story and how that led you to become so dedicated to this communication path, this public speaking. I mean, I've always heard that communication is the one thing that you should hire for because every other thing can really be taught. And here you are teaching communication in some ways. I don't know if you think of yourself that way, but how did you find your path here?
To absolutely hating it. Like, seriously, it was my number one fear. I've lived this journey. This is the whole reason why I'm doing this,
Mm.
is because I know how painful it can be. I was born into a family where we just didn't really communicate well, didn't know how to. And there wasn't also an awful lot of truth as well. And now this is so, it's always the way, isn't it? But it's ironic that these are the two things now I'm all about, is communicating your truth, aligning yourself with your truth, and then how do you express that? And so I went through this painful process of like not being able to really resonate and relate with people, whether that and build those connections and relationships, like, personally, friends, making friends as I was growing up, and then in the professional world as well. And yeah, it took a lot of like, I don't like to say failures. I like to say learnings. They're all learnings, aren't
I
they? They're
love
just
it.
good
Yes.
growth
That's a
opportunities.
good growth mindset you have there.
Yeah, yeah. I've had to train myself, can you tell? Um, However, this is it. It did take a lot of painful situations for me to sit down and go, I've just got to own this. And that's my tagline, is just own it. And I now use this, right? Even when I'm journaling and doing things nowadays, I will sit down and be like, where can I take responsibility? How do I just own this moment? And this, my whole thing is about owning your story, realizing that you are the narrator. This is your story. And whatever you want, you can have with the right, you said, right attitude, right mindset. It's achievable. It's just getting people to that place. So that's what I had to do. I had to sit myself down and go, do you know what? I'm not doing well here. All of my shortcomings were because of my poor communication. And then I looked at my role models and some of the best women and men in leadership roles in business, and they're all fantastic communicators.
Mm.
And I was like, hold on, this is a really big deal. This is really important. And this is why then I started my journey of going and asking for help. And it is that vulnerability of actually being able to put your hand up and go like, look, I'm just not good. I need help with this. And there's so much power. I think we're getting better at it, aren't we? Vulnerability. I think we're getting better at it, Gemini. Do you think?
It's in pockets, I think. Yes, more maybe than it used to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, one observation I wanted to follow up on is you're bringing all of this wealth of knowledge in the corporate space, and let's face it, sometimes there are people that are very resistant of all of this work. Like communication abilities are not widely shared as something that people enjoy doing or even want to invest on. So how do you react when you receive resistance from the other side? I mean,
Then
you
I'm like,
already said I walk away, but is there any other tips?
it's just not, I just don't have the like resource right now, time, or like to really to invest in that. As much as I'd like to help everybody and I want to help as many people as I can, really I have learned that like you cannot help everyone.
Mm.
And you got to draw a line somewhere. And mine is, I want to work with change makers. I want to work with people who are like, I am ready. Like when I go and work with my coach, number one, I'm paying a lot of money. So as soon as my bum hits that chair, I am like, give it to me, making every penny worth. However, that's what I want from my clients as well. They got to be, like I said, to have that transformation, they've got to be invested
Mm.
and they've got to want it. And if they don't want it, it's like, you can take a horse to water, but you can't make it scuba dive,
No, that's true.
right?
So maybe a different way of getting Nadia to your question, because I love this, right? Like this is what you are choosing to dedicate your life to. So you don't have the time for people who aren't interested in it because your time is dedicated to all these people who are interested in it, and there's plenty of them. But what might your pitch be? Let's say there's a listener who isn't maybe sold on the idea of the importance of communication. Speak to those folks who aren't sold yet. What would you say maybe in terms of why this is so instrumental and transformative as a skill set?
Oh, that is a good question. So these are people who are not bought into communication. They
Yeah,
don't.
not worth it, not my thing. I'm an engineer. I'm a, whatever. Insert here. This isn't important for me. I'm not, maybe let's say, a salesperson. At least that would be a narrative I feel like I've heard before, is those are the people who are the talkers. I'm not the talker.
Mm.
And I don't have to be, maybe.
Exactly.
But do you not have to be? I think fundamentally, if we go down to even like the crux of society and if we go down to like the lowest common denominator, what's making this all happen? It's language, it's people, it's communication.
Mm.
And it's a really lonely life to not have any of those, to be that isolated is not much fun, really. And
Mm.
so fundamentally, and even if that isn't for work, you've got to communicate at some point to somebody, and maybe that's even just yourself, right? So that's a whole nother conversation. How do you communicate with yourself? What's like, what tone do you use? What words do you use? And language is super interesting. It's super important to the way that we express ourselves. And if we're not doing that in the right way, I always say, like, if a tree fell in the woods and nobody heard, did it fall at all? And it's kind of the same thing about, like, if you're not speaking, like, you might have the best ideas, and if you're not able to share them in an impactful way, then they don't really exist. So,
Well, here they say closed mouths don't get fed. So that's something that really stick with me when someone said it. I do want to ask you some very specific questions, because I mean I love everything, like Jeff. I mean, Jeff and I have been hosting a podcast. We've been spending 3 years owning our communication skills and go on stages and all of it. And then, like you, I really believe in the power of reframing your brain, how you talk to yourself matters, and all of it. So, a couple of very pointed questions. When you talk to yourself, for our listeners, let's say that you are early in this journey and you're exploring and you want to start with a practice, let's say a daily practice. When you talk to yourself, is it enough if I talk to myself in my head? Or, as a professional in this field, would you say it's more important that I say out loud, like affirmations? What do you say?
we're talking about practicing to go on stage, or just affirmations?
Just for your life. Let's say I'm listening to this, I'm loving this woman, and I want to start embracing this mental rewiring. Is it okay if I say things in my head, or do I need to say it out loud?
Yeah, so I think affirmations are great, definitely. Just to even know what you want, and that's the whole point, right? So just to establish an affirmation normally is like that: I am happy, I am whatever you are intending to be, that you are affirming to yourself. And saying it, yes, of course, is important. The way that you say it, the tonality is really important as well. I had a coach say to me once, she was like, when you speak to yourself, like, how does that sound? Does that sound like someone? And I was like, oh my God, I think I sound like my mum sometimes. I was like, oh, I need to start that again. So, and she said, like, how do you speak to the person that you love the most in the world? And I was like, oh, that's different. Yeah, that is a different tonality, the different words that I use. And she was like, well, why don't you start to speak to yourself the way that you speak to the person you love most in the world? And I was like, well, that would make sense. Like, that's a good idea.
How do you do it, Kay? Like, when does that happen? 'Cause so that, like, affirmations in the mirror, I think, have like a very mixed view in the world. Like, am I really supposed to wake up and say, there was like an SNL skit, I think, that made fun of it. Like, you're beautiful, people love you, you're kind. Like, is that really the best practice? I would say personally, it shows up for me more when I'm like beating myself up in my head after doing something wrong.
Yeah.
And fortunately, I can usually intercept that and go, whoa, 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 like, all right, give some grace. This is going on. What can you learn from it? And now it's okay. Like, great, learn something, and now we're moving on. And that, to me, is what speaking to myself like someone I love means. But what does it actually look like for you as a professional in this field? To what degree are you even speaking to yourself?
Yeah. So I definitely, like you as well, if I ever catch, obviously I'm human as well. And there's times I catch myself that I'm like, hold on a second. Let's just like go back there. And then I'm like, no, like, I love you. And so I do sometimes catch myself in the mirror and I'm like, yeah, you're like, you're lovely. You're good. What all those things that I need to hear in that moment sometimes are really effective. It's not something that I would get up in the morning and dedicate myself to, but some people do. And if that works for you, I think that is great. However, I would say beyond words, only 7% of communication. 38% is tonality, 55% is physiology. And actually, a lot of what we experience is through our senses. So when we're doing affirmations, if we are saying something but we don't feel it, is a disconnect. So what's much better, if you want to like really amplify that, is if you want to feel love. I love myself, and I am loved. Remember a time when you felt so loved, and like really feel it in all your cells and all your body, and really conjure up that feeling. And then can you amplify it when you were in that moment? Like, what did you hear? Were there sound? Were people clapping? Were they saying your name? Oh my God, well done, Nadia, you're amazing, I love you. Like, what did you hear? What did you see? Like, use all of your senses to really amplify that feeling. And that's so much better than just doing an affirmation.
I just did it and got goosebumps myself thinking about
Yeah,
a time.
love this.
Well, I will say that lately I've been training also my own chat GPT to tell me things like that. And it's been incredibly effective. You know, I've been reading about my own intentions and reading about the things I do well. And it's giving me kind of a boost on a daily basis. So whatever works, works. So I know we are approaching the end of the show. And I want to make sure that we gift our listeners with some of your gold drops, I would call them. And a question Jeff and I always ask to each of our guests is, what is a last word of wisdom that you want our listeners to live with?
I think I've got a few things, a few of my like mottos or how I live my life. And that's, again, I'm going to go back to my just own it tagline. So be an owner. Like, you are the CEO of your own narrative, of your own story. So just own it. Don't stick your head in the sand like an ostrich and hope that it's all just going to figure out for you. Like, it's about moving from being at effect, things affecting you, life affecting you, to actually being a cause and really like taking that ownership and that responsibility. Like, you are the creator and you influence your surroundings. And the power, I would say, of reinvention is a big one. So I think that every moment is a moment to show up differently and reinvent yourself. So maybe if you are one of those people who hasn't embarked on getting a coach or understand the, benefits of being a good communicator, then maybe that could be involved in your next chapter. What would your next chapter look like? Some of the best brands have reinvented themselves, whether that's Apple, cutting down their and actually like streamlining their products and services. Some companies haven't reinvented themselves, like a Nokia, for example, or a BlackBerry, and we know what happened to them. So the power of reinvention and actually embarking on that new chapter is really exciting. So what could that look like for you? That would be my question to the audience. And going back to narrative, we're living in one big narrative. It is a story, and it is about how well you tell that story. And like Steve Jobs said, the most powerful person in the room is the storyteller. We know that you can tenfold the value of something when you add a good story to it. And so my quote is, the best stories are those that are retold. And your life is like a book. You are the author. So why not make it a story worth retelling? Then, AKA, what's your legacy? And if you were to reinvent yourself, what would that next chapter be? And I guess it starts with that power of vulnerability and asking for help.
Well, you're talking to a writer here, Jeff. So
I love it. I'm eating it up. Kay, thank you so much. I'm sure our listeners are as well. Where can people find you?
Yeah, so you can go to my website, which is www.kmondays.com, and you can find my information there to reach out to me, or you can find me on social media as well. So I'm on Instagram, on LinkedIn, on my main platforms, or Facebook as well.
Amazing. Thank you for being here today. You got so much energy that you transferred in these few minutes, and your clients are definitely lucky to be working with you.
Oh, likewise. So lovely to spend this time with you. Thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Kay.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Wow, Jeff, that was definitely an interesting conversation. I was wondering what were you thinking in the woo-woo section, because that was music to my ears.
I know, I know. Well, now we've talked. I love the opportunity to just talk in this podcast about such deep things with so many people who are strangers, walking into it. So I've heard quite a bit of woo woo now, and I honestly I love it. Like I think so deeply true it is to start from that inner narrative to get clarity on who you are. And frankly, just like lots of things in medicine, like lots of things in so many other fields, whatever works. Hey, like if it's going to be hypnotherapy, or it's going to be acupuncture, or it's going to be cards, or it's going to be religion, or it's going to be taking a quiz, whatever it is that's really going to help you connect, I'm in. So any of that apprehension that I had maybe at the beginning of our 99 humans, now having spoken to so many different people about so many different ways to get at the same core that we all believe to be true, I'm here for it.
I really like that you highlighted in this way because, I started to mentally go back to some of our interviews, even with people that were more grounded on earth or things like that. And you're so right. Like everyone has different flavors of how they connect with themselves, how they listen to their intuition. Some people might call it manifestation, some others would give it other names. And yet it's all the same. And so it's pretty crazy. I mean, we're almost at 80 interviews that we've done. So, it's a significant number. And we've been interviewing people from any walk of life. And it's been kind of a constant. So it's pretty amazing, Jeff. We could be researchers.
We're getting into book territory here, I think, where I can't wait to synthesize, because you're right. I mean, those are the patterns, right? And we knew we'd find them, and it's more even knowing we would find them, it's still magical when they occur and you go, huh, okay, this is the pattern, and it could have been predicted, but it starts with a feeling before you can put your finger on it, that, wow, this sounds familiar, even though it's a chef this time talking, or it's a communications coach, or it's a teacher, or wow, we're all doing very similar things in super different ways.
The beauty of humanity. So, Jeff, what is your biggest takeaway from today's session?
Well, I really like the concept of reinvention associated with the idea of being your own CEO. I use that phrase. I think that's a nice way to think about life, is like, okay, I have to run my operation, and I can be in a bubble of a company, or in a bubble of a family, or in all these different things that provide structures, but I still need to be responsible. But I hadn't then taken it to the idea of, well, CEOs reinvent companies and innovate and change and all. How do I make sure that that's there? So that was like a really nice add-on to a familiar topic. And then my brain is like spiraling. I'm like, well, what other things do CEOs do? And like, what are all the other responsibilities that maybe help? So sort of through that forced analogy, there's a whole line of thinking that I could go down now on being the owner of my life, which I want to write a really interesting story. I want to be an interesting person and fulfilled and happy with communion and all that. But there's all these different ways to approach it that kind of unlock with that idea of reinvention.
That's so beautiful. I really like. I know it's not woo woo, it's actually very practical, but I really like when you said you got to run your own operations.
Mm.
And once you run your own operations, what happens? Yeah, very nice.
All
I
right,
will
Nadia, how
say,
about you? What are you taking away?
yeah, I mean, everything I appreciate it, right? You know that I'm a big believer of how you talk to yourself, your thoughts shape your reality, and all of that. I really appreciated the point where she was talking about you are the creator. And I actually linked that back with her initial comments on what are the stories that you are telling to yourself. And it's fascinating because when I started my first coaching education 6 years ago, I remember that my coaching master was like very firm in pointing out when I was using language that was jeopardizing all that I was doing.
Mm.
And I remember that back in back then, I would take it very personally. And now that I'm far ahead in this healing journey and this awareness journey, I'm like, wow, she was so right.
Mm.
And so I want to bring this home, this reflection home, with this comment that is, the best gift you can do for yourself is develop the ability to have awareness on how are you speaking to yourself, what are the things you're saying. The way you communicate with others is the reflection of how you communicate to yourself. And since you are the creator, eventually what happens around you is the reflection of your actions and thoughts,
Mm.
which it does imply that you are taking radical responsibility on you. So
I
I know
love
that this
that.
is a little deep
I
to
think
close
that's,
our
I mean,
episode.
it's so, I feel like it bucks the trend, because as we as a society also become more aware of the system's influence on our lives, it is still true that the radical responsibility for our actual individual lives is at where the buck stops, right? Everything else can be nudging us and blowing us certain ways and all that, but I love it. It's a great episode, great conversation. If you enjoyed listening along with us, please give us 5-star review, and we will see you next time on 99 Humans.
Thank you. Bye. Ciao, ciao.